What is going on, guys? Today we're going to be going over the Lord of Shadows and Jasper Unbound. Tomorrow's going to be the video for the characters that you can get with the silver and gold keys. Now, we're not going over Mortagon or any of the other previous Dragon Quest XI units because I already have reviewed them. They have not been changed at all. So if you want to see that stuff, I'm going to have that in the description for you guys. So let's get into Jasper Unbound and Lord of Shadows, and maybe a little bit of a WOMBO combo for you Dragon Quest XI fans out there when it comes to these units. Jasper Unbound here is going to be a Stardust Ray Chainer, and his TMR is the Strategist. It's going to give you 20% HP and 30% attack all the time. It's basically wisdom from Queen, but if you have a fist weapon equipped, it's going to give you an additional 30% attack there. It's a pretty okay TMR for using fist weapons. Get a little bit of HP, get that 60% attack as well. So maybe you guys, if you get your hands on this, is going to be something that will be using in your true double hand fist builds. True dual wield fist builds probably won't care about that too much because you're true dual wielding, which means double item world weapons, which means you're probably going to be able to cap out your attack a lot easier and might not need the Strategist. Now, the super TMR here is the Supreme Sentinel, which gives you 60% attack in magic, and then gives you physical and magic Man-Eater increased by 75%. So if you do get your hands on the Supreme Sentinel, the most use I'll see for this is for the Human Killer, coupled with the attack and magic, obviously. But the most notable thing is that it's going to be a 60% magic super TMR that isn't conditional. There's a couple of magic-based materials that are higher, 80% magic, but they need either like a sword equipped, like CG Transterra's or CG Terra, Magic Armor Terra, whatever you want to call her, or Shantoto. There's only a couple of them that are 60% magic, so if this is something that you're looking for, an unconditional magic percent, oh, there's also Elena's, because that one's so good. That's probably the major use out of the Supreme Sentinel you're going to get. Now, outside of that, neither of these are must-gets. Let's get to Jasper Unbound really quickly. His weapon selection, swords, spears, and fist weapons, so nothing too amazing there. And his armor selection's hats and light armor, so it's actually downright terrible. His equipment selection is pretty awful. Luckily, you know, there's a one-handed spear and a one-handed fist weapon from the different chambers of the Fallen Reborn characters with Ultros, as well as I do believe Lich is going to give you the spear, and Ultros and Typhon Reborn will give you the fist weapon, the Tiger's Fang. Now, moving into his skills, we do have a Dark Element and Lightning Elemental Imbue skill with Grim Grin and Striking Smile. After that, he's going to have Wild Eye that's going to allow him to evade 3 physical attacks. Breakneck Blitz is going to be his first actual damage dealing skill. It's going to be his main damage dealing skill. It's going to be Stardust Ray Frames, and it's going to be a 2-part attack. So the first 9 hits is going to be a 2.0 multiplier. That final hit's going to be a 7.0. And because it's broken up this way, any sort of multiplier increases on Breakneck Blitz is going to apply 2 times. One to the front hit, and then 1 time additionally to the following follow-up hit there. I don't know why I channeled my inner Shatner there, but we're moving on from there. He does have a dual cast innately, and that's going to be it for his 6-star kit. His 7-star kit is going to be leading with Tactical Genius, a 5-turn cooldown available on turn 1. It's going to be 100% Dark and Lightning in Peril for 4 turns to all enemies. It's going to give him a 200% attack and spirit buff for 4 turns, and it's going to give him a 3.0 multiplier increase. Primarily, the most important one here is Breakneck Blitz, as well as a couple of his other skills. It's also going to enable 3-peat performance for 5 turns, which is going to be his triple cast ability. His next 2 skills are going to be very similar. The first one is going to be Dire Pyre. It's going to be a 2-turn cooldown available on turn 2. It's going to be a 22 times multiplier to all enemies as dark physical damage. It's also going to increase your limit burst gauge by 16 crystals, and it's going to be the Stardust Ray Chaining Frame family. Silver Spark is the following one. It's the same skill, but instead of doing dark damage, it's going to be doing lightning damage. These both unlock on turn 2. You can dual cast them. That's going to give you 32 limit burst crystals. You will be doing a combination of dark and lightning damage, but thankfully his previous cooldown is a double in peril as well, so you'll be able to get your limit burst up guaranteed by turn 2 here. Now, Barbarous Blitz is going to be his next cooldown skill. It's going to be available on turn 3. It's going to cure all of his stat breaks, attack, defense, magic, and spirit, and it's going to be Stardust Ray with a 5.0 multiplier that ignores 50% defense in the first 9 hits, and then that last hit is going to be a 10 times mod, ignore 50% defense, in total a 30 times multiplier. His final skill is Disruptive Wave, which removes all buffs from all enemies on a 12-turn cooldown available on turn 1. Moving into his passives, he's going to have a combination of a lot of different attack and MP. So attack and MP passives, limit burst gauge per turn, HP and spirit here increased by 20%. He's going to have additional lightning and dark resist increased by 30%. Base crit hit chance increased by 50% in case you decide to auto attack. 100% high tide. He's gonna be immune to paralysis and confusion as well as stop. He has a chance to counter with Karmic Farmer to physical and magical attacks there. Does get 50% additional attack when equipped to the fist, 100% true double hand, and then his trust abilities can give him an additional 50% true double hand, 50% attack, and 30% HP and MP. He auto casts Pet Power at the start of the battle, which we'll get into, and then the last 3 passives, 20% defense, 30% attack, defense, and spirits, and then an additional 30% spirit, 20% HP, and 50% dark resistance. His conditional skills here with Karma Farmer, 3P performance, and Pet Power. Karma Farmer is just going to be the counter that's going to give you a 1 stack of Mirage. 3P for performance, as we said before, is his triple cast, and then Pet Power is going to give you a skill that unlocks every couple turns. So after the start of the fight, 3 turns later, you're going to get a 200% attack buff for 99,999 turns, and you're going to get a 2 times multiplier increase to Breakneck Blitz. 2 turns later, you're going to get that attack buff increased to 250%, and the multiplier increase is going to go up to a 3.0. And none of these can be dispelled. These will only go away if you do in fact die. His limit burst is going to be the final thing to go over. It's going to be Javelin of Judgment, dark physical damage, 25 times multiplier with a more 50% defense, so a 50 times multiplier limit burst on a true double hand unit. That is a high limit burst multiplier, and it's going to increase the multiplier of, most importantly, Breakneck Blitz by another 2.0, as well as Silver Spark, Dire Pyre, and Barbarous Blitz on top of that, those being his big cooldown skills here. So that's going to apply a lot. All in all, once his cooldowns have been used, once those multipliers have been stacked with his Limit Burst as well as the Pet Power, he's going to be able to hit Breakneck Blitz for near a 27-ish times multiplier, depending on how far you are into the fight, which is pretty strong. He is a pretty strong damage dealer based on lightning and dark, so if you do end up with him, he's going to be pretty good, and he does have a very nice free weapon in the form of Aigion's Fist Reborn. The Reborn Aigion Fist, the 2-handed version, is going to be very strong for him. He's got Fist Weapon TMR, so you can put that on him quite nicely. Like I said, it works really well with true double hand fist builds, as well as being a true double hand unit and having a fist weapon passive. So if you get your hands on him, you're pulling for some of the box units, the key units, you'll be able to use him. He's gonna be very strong for you. Incredibly potent damage dealer, 27 times multiplier, triple cast, 50 times limit burst damage, modifier there on his limit burst, excuse me. That's gonna be pretty powerful as well. No crazy limit burst damage as a passive. That's gonna be saved for our next unit, but he does have 50% in total here, so that's going to help him out quite a lot as well. It's not going to be an insane amount like the other character, but Jasper Unbound, very strong character. If you're a Dragon Quest XI fan, you'll be very happy with him, and I do believe this is going to be the result of characters never getting nerfed again. I do believe it was made as a statement not too long ago. So we're never going to get any sort of changed forms, which maybe that could be pretty powerful when the Full Metal Alchemist collab comes out here, if it ever does. So look forward to the Full Metal Alchemist collab review as well this weekend. There's a lot of stuff for us to be talking about. Now, the Lord of Shadows is going to be an interesting character here, and he's going to have one small maybe possibility that we'll talk about at the end of the review here. So his TMR is the beginning of the end. It doesn't give you any stats at all. It actually gives you an ability, but this is fine because he gets a lot of stuff for having his Trust passive activated. So it's going to be a skill that is a 3 times mod with ignore 50% defense, and it's going to be AoE, and it's going to remove all status effects from all units, it says. So based on this wording, it's something that removes all status effects from everyone in the game, not just your enemies, not just your team, everybody. And it's also going to be the Bolting Strike Chaining Frame family. So you can put this on a support if you want a Bolting Strike. Maybe if you have access to a dual wield support, you put the beginning and the end on them. That's going to allow them to dual wield Bolting Strike chain together. That could be a possibility. You can also use it on the Lord of Shadows himself to turn him into a Bolting Strike chainer, though that's going to make him do quite a bit less damage than what he would be doing otherwise. The super team right here is going to be the Sword of Shadows. It's going to be 178 attack. 2-handed Dark Elemental Greatsword. So if you're looking for a 2-handed Dark Elemental Greatsword, this is going to be right up there. I do believe it's the only 2-handed Dark Elemental Greatsword available, period. I don't remember if there's ever going to be one that comes out in the future either. I think this is it. This is the only one there. So if you're looking forward to something like this, then that's going to be right up your alley. Now, moving on into his kit and equipment selection, he has access to very similar stuff as far as armor selection that Jasper Unbound did, but just in reverse. So he's got access to helmets and heavy armor instead of hats and light armor. So very minimum armor selection there. That's going to be a pretty big downside. Some of the better pieces of the gear in the game are hats, but it depends on what you have available on your account. But as far as weapons go, he's got swords, great swords, katanas, bows, axes, hammers, spears, and maces. So great swords, katanas, two-handed versions of those, that's going to be amazing for you as well. There was a one-handed or two-handed sword, normal sword, not a great sword, given on not too long ago. There's bows as well that are available. And then Ignacio's axe is probably the best two-handed one, but you're not going to be using it on this guy here. Now moving into his actual skills here, we're going to kind of get into the actual ones that matter here. We're not going to talk about a lot of the garbage ones. So he does have an AoE Dispel with Blazing Blue Blast, and then he's got access to Frigid Frog as well as Fell Flash. Now these are going to be Stardust Ray skills. He's a Stardust Ray chainer. They're going to be 80% imperils to either Ice or Dark, depending on which one you're using, Frigid, Fog, or Fell Flash here. We have Helicazam as well, which is a Dark skill that's Stardust Ray. It also imbues you with Dark for 5 turns. That's going to help you out right there as far as Dark Imbue goes. His next skill is going to be the Blade of Ultimate Power. Now this is going to be the skill that he's going to be using a lot of the time for his big damage dealing shenanigans. Now repeat performance here allows him to dual cast his skills, very strong. It also allows you to go ahead and dual cast the skill from his TMR, the beginning of the end, in case you want to have him chain with some bolting strike characters, but once again, not as strong as the Blade of Ultimate Power. He also has got Cracker Whack, which is a slightly weaker version of Blade of Ultimate Power, and it does not get as many damage multiplier increases as Blade of Ultimate Power does. But as you've seen, he does not have a Ice Imbue. He only has a Dark Imbue. So if you want to do ice damage with a good multiplier, you're going to be stuck with either someone imbuing him or using Kakraka Whack here. Moving into his cooldown skills, we have Violet Veil, which is a 6-turn cooldown available on turn 1. 250% attack, defense, magic, and spirit buff for 4 turns to the caster. Gives him a 3,500 HP barrier for 4 turns as well, and enables 3-peat performance, which is going to be his triple cast for 4 turns. Crimson Cloud, shout out to Devil May Cry 5, I guess. 10-turn cooldown, available on turn 1. V's coming in with a increased resistance to attack and magic break of 100% for 3 turns to all allies, and it's going to increase the multiplier by 6.0 for 9 turns to both Blade of Ultimate Power and his other skills, a Cut Above, Fell Flash, Frigid Fog, Helicazam, Hellish Howl, and Krakawak. But most notably, Krakawak and Blade of Ultimate Power, 6 times multiplier increases there. His following skill is a skill that we're going to be talking about a little bit more at the end of the review, which is going to be Kaching Kaklang. It's going to be an 80% attack and magic break for 1 turn to 1 enemy, which is very powerful as a breaker. He's got a very nice break here, but he's going to have to do this like every turn. It also is one of the only skills he cannot dual cast, so this is all he's doing that turn. And the other downside is it applies a mitigate damage taken by all damage types by 100%, so a general damage mitigation for 1 turn to 1 enemy, so it's going to buff them by 100% damage mitigation. His final skill is going to be the Midnight Magic Burst. It's going to be available on turn 5, and if you're for some reason dual wielding this character, it only single casts anyhow. It's going to be a 34 times multiplier with ignore 50% defense, so a 68 times mod. And next turn, it's going to automatically refresh your MP for this unit to 100%. It's also the Stardust Ray Chaining Frame family. Moving into his passives, we have attack and MP 30%, LB damage 25% increase, limit burst gauge fill rate 100%, 40% defense, ice and dark resist 40%, MP plus 40%, ice resist plus 40%, silence and petrify resistance, spirit plus 40%, another dark resist plus 40%, another 25% limit burst damage here, 20% attack, 100% true double hand, and then if you have his TMR on, remember, because you have to wear this TMR, doesn't give any stats, but if you do have it on and you have it available, 50% attack, 50% defense, 50% HP, 50% limit burst damage, and 2 limit burst gauge crystals per turn. So it more than makes up for the fact that you're kind of wasting materia slot. You definitely want to have the Pinnacle of Creation, his trust ability, activated. Whether or not you have his TMR or Super TMR equipped, you want this ability activated. He also has the Pet Power thing. as Jasper Unbound did, but his pet power is so much stronger than Jasper Unbound's. We'll get into that shortly. Attack plus 20%. Then his final passive, 50% HP, 50% attack, 50% additional true double hand, 2 times multipliers to Crack-a-Whack and Blade of Ultimate Power, and then 4 and 6 times multipliers to some of his weaker skills you won't really be using, but primarily Blade of Ultimate Power and Crack-a-Whack with a 2 times mod increase. His conditional stuff, 3 peak performance, which is his triple cast, and then his pet power. So after 2 turns, he's going to get a 3.0 multiplier increase to Blade of Ultimate Power. 4 turns, 6.0 multiplier increase. 6 turns, 9 times multiplier increase. So definitely way better than Jasper Unbound's passive, although Jasper Unbound got to double dip a little bit because his skill is broken up to two different hits. So it kind of was 6 times, whereas this pet power is 9 times total at the very end here. His limit burst here is the Black Break. It's going to cost 32 crystals. It's going to increase your limit burst damage. It can be a buff that applies right away by 59% for 1 turn to the caster. It's going to do a 100% Dark Imperil, and then it's going to do a 34.5 times multiplier to all enemies. So Lord of Shadows has a lot more limit burst damage. Jasper Unbound has less limit burst damage, but a higher mod on the limit burst there. But all in all, Lord of Shadows, I like a little bit better. Jasper Unbound is more flexible. And the reason I really like this character is he's very straightforward. You just kind of get in there, you Crimson Cloud, you know, you summon your inner V, and then you just start Blade of Ultimate Powering very, very, very fast and hard, and you imbue him with something, you do your Imperil, and you just start doing damage. So, and then you limit burst if you want to. You don't have to, but you can if you feel like it. And then you just kind of, you know, plow over people. Jasper Unbound is very strong as well. And you have this unique thing as well with the remove all status effects from all units from the beginning to the end. So that's going to be a thing there for Lord of Shadows. Now let's talk about Ka-Ching Ka-Clang real quick. And I'm not sure if this is actually going to work. I have not been able to test it myself. I do not own this unit and haven't found one on my friends list yet because maintenance isn't actually over yet. I'm recording this during maintenance tonight on a Wednesday, so you guys can have this Thursday when you wake up. But 100% damage mitigation for 1 turn to 1 enemy. There is a character that we know of that exists right now, and then maybe in the future with his 7-star version is going to be Zahn. Now, if we look at Twist of Fate and check it out, it mirrors positive status effects for 1 enemy for 2 turns to all allies, removes all status effects from that enemy. Notes though, Reflect, Physical, and Magic resistance cannot be stolen. Now, what we need to know is if General Mitigation, which is technically a separate buff, can be stolen, because if you can steal General Mitigation, which bosses don't really get General Mitigation, I think this is why Twist of Fate is physical and magic resistance only, because when you go into Gilgamesh Kai, they have a physical resistance buff and a magical resistance buff. They don't have like reduces just damage done in most scenarios, or they might have a special general damage mitigation buff. What we need to know is if the buff from Lord of Shadows can be stolen by Twist of Fate, because if it can, based on the wording here, that's going to be a big cheese. So, you know, you just kind of Ka-Ching Ka-Clang and Twist of Fate it, and then just do that every turn and have 100% damage mitigation for your whole party for 1 turn. You're using 2 units to do that, but you're also just invincible. So if that works, and you can live through maybe a preemptive attack, your characters will be invincible for forever. So if this does work, that's going to be overpowered, and I don't think this should be a reason, even if this does work, that you should pull for this character. Because if it does, they're definitely going to change it. There's no way that that's going to stay in the game. You know, I'm, you know, very against changes, but that is definitely something that will not exist in this game if it does exist in the first place. You'd have a catch-all. You'd have to design the entire game around people having access to that. You know, Lord of Shadows, even if you don't pull one, you know, everyone's got a Zahn. You can go in there and get Twist of Fate +2, and no one wants to design content around everyone having access to that. If you're trying to go do a trial, you know, go to the Discord, go to the Reddit, go somewhere, go to some social media site, ask for a Lord of Shadows friend. They don't really need any gear. All right, just go in there, Ka-Ching Ka-Clang, steal it over and over and over. So that's going to be a unique thing. See if it works. If it doesn't, maybe it'll work for a limited time. It'll be pretty fun to do. It might be the ultimate WOMBO combo for these units. And that's going to be it for today with this banner, the DQ11 Lord of Shadows Jasper Unbound. We're going to have the other units from the game, the main characters, tomorrow. And then the previous units, if you want to see access and have access to those guys, definitely go and check out that banner review that was made. They haven't been changed, and I'll have the link once again to the description, in the description of this video, for those units, guys. As always, comment down below. I appreciate reading them. You guys are fantastic. It helps the video and the channel grow with more engagement. YouTube wants engagement, engagement, engagement. So, you know, if we can give them a little engagement, that'll be awesome. And until then, guys, I'll see you in the next